Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Robert Vaughn, and I'm pleased to make your acquaintance today. As you can see, I rest in this absolutely beautiful setting, but I came a long ways from where I was born in Wales. So June 5th, 1836, I came into this world, and I was the third of 6 children. And my father was a game warden in the Royal Forest, and my mom was a good Episcopalian and the best mom you could ever have. So, you know, she always taught me to obey, to be faithful, to love God, and to love my fellows. And I think I did my best to practice those things throughout my entire life. And so, you know, you grow up in Wales, I didn't speak any English, right? So I didn't speak any English at home, all Welsh. And I knew I wanted something more in my life, right? I knew there was a much bigger world. And so in 1855, when I was 19 years old, I went up to Liverpool. And I had my sister Jane was living there, and I got on with a wealthy banker there, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Haywood. And I was a gardener. And I learned some about the soil that did me well in Montana, but what I mostly learned was English. And so, after a few years there, I thought, you know, I should head back home and get back to mom and dad. But for a little interim, my brother had gone over to America the year before. He was living in Rome, New York. And I said, well, I'll go visit my brother, right? I'll take a little time there. And so I didn't tell my folks. I just got on a steamship. I got on the Vito, and I headed over to America for a short visit with my brother. Well, sure enough, I showed up there, and I really liked it. And in fact, I thought, you know what? The real opportunity is going out west. You know, so I had my brother's sister, Ann, was living in Palmyra, Ohio. And so I went over there, I did some coal mining, I did some farming, and sure enough, you'll notice this pattern, my brother in the interim had moved to Illinois. So I went just a little bit further west, and I was doing farming and coal mining. Now, 1864 comes along, right? We've got the 1849 gold rush is well in the past, right? But the new gold fever, right, is out in the Idaho territory. And so 6 of my friends and I, we left out to head to get our piece of the riches. And we did the classic, you know, you go up to Council Bluffs, get on the Oregon Trail, and then about 50 miles northeast of Fort Laramie is the start of a brand new trail just blazed the year before by a gentleman you all may know, John Bozeman. And so we linked up with John Bozeman, and he took a crew of us called the McKnight Group. We started out with 19 wagons, and then folks flowing in from Fort Laramie, we had about 100. And we set out for Alder Gulch. And if you all know that, it's near Virginia City. And so we reached Virginia City in the July, right, and gold fever was on. And gold fever was on everywhere. In the interim, it had become Montana territory. So I left thinking I was going to Idaho, and they, in May of that year, made this Montana territory. So I'm there, and I'll tell you what, it was getting crowded there in Alder, and so a group of folks headed out for Last Chance Gulch. And I'm pretty sure you all know about that, right? If anybody walks around Helena, right, that's the main drag. But at that time, we were pulling lots of gold out. And so me and my friends, we headed over to a nearby gulch called Nelson. And when I was there, I visually, with my own eyes, I saw a 60-pound piece of gold pulled out. Sadly, it was not mine. And that's a pattern. As I went to different mining places, there were people getting rich, striking it all over. But it never was happening for me. But I noticed something. I noticed that this grass was gold. And I noticed that cattle and horses grew fat on this wonderful Montana grass. And so after trying out my time in the mines, I did some, you know, I was a meat packer for a while. I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go try my luck ranching. And so I headed out here to the Sun River, which was Choteau County there, which at that time covered 1/6 of the entire state. And when I went to register my homestead, I realized I was the first person to stake a claim in Choteau County. And so I was there, and I built myself a beautiful 2-room sandstone house. People were coming in. We started irrigation. And so, we had barley and oats growing. And I finally felt like I was, getting settled. And so, I'm coming up on 50 years of age now, right? This is, the 1880s. And so I started saying, you know what? Things are really coming together for me, but it's lonely out here. And I need to find a wife. And then the apple of my eye, Elizabeth Donahue from Toronto, she came, and my whole life changed there. I was smitten. And so we got married, and then the greatest day of my life, right, was January 1st of 1888 when my daughter, our Vaughn, was born. And I thought, you know what, now I've got my beautiful daughter, my beautiful wife. I'm out here on this homestead. This couldn't be any better. And as life, sometimes things go. My wife died 12 days later. And so it was crushing. I just felt like I'd worked so hard and everything was kind of against me. But, as my mom taught me, you just gotta trust God and you gotta move forward. And so I knew I couldn't make it out in this homestead by myself, right? I was trying to raise an infant girl. And so I had become good friends with Paris Gibson. And if you all know, he came out in 1880 and he knew there was potential here for hydroelectric, right, and doing smelting and such. And so I'd actually helped him plot out Great Falls in 1883. And so now Great Falls was booming. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to make my living, make my way in Great Falls. And I bought and built one of the first structures in Great Falls. It's still here today, called the Vaughn block. And this thing was top notch. It was 40-room hotel, the livery, stables, the best in the business. And I'll tell you what, a little secret, today you can still enjoy that, right? It's the Vaughn block, and also the Celtic cowboy named after yours truly. So we still got a little bit of that going. But I get in there, and this is when my kind of second life started, right? So I was very good friends with Paris, and we invested in all kinds of things around Great Falls, in mines around Montana. And I became really good friends with C.M. Russell. So I know you guys just talked to him earlier, and I actually, if any of you guys are big aficionados and you know Big Nose George and the Road Agents, it's a painting. He's got his own museum, I know, that's in there. That's actually my letter that I wrote to Charlie telling him about a story I'd heard, and he went out and painted that. So in this time in Great Falls, it really was. I got to see this city come about, and I got to spend a ton of time with my daughter, who's right here with me, and her husband, Ed Sprague. He was a civil engineer, right? And then in my later years, I started having osteoarthritis. And so, I didn't just whine about it, right? No, I said, you know what? I can still be a friend to people. So I would go out and I would sit there and say hi to everyone, just walking around Great Falls. And I came to be known as Uncle Bob. And so my last years, I had my daughter, her husband, and, we lost my namesake, Robert. You can see his grave right there in infancy, but my 3 grandchildren. And I just lived a beautiful life. And I was able to say, this was my wife's dying words, and these were my thoughts, right? Blessed be the Savior who died on the cross. Tell the folks I died happy. Goodbye. And I died happy here in Montana, and I've had the blessing to be in this beautiful cemetery ever since. So thank you all so much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed this talk.